So you'll forgive us a bit if our minds wander a little during this off week. If we start thinking about some things, some different things, thinking about the big picture, the future, kind of where things stand, and thinking specifically, at least for today, about the ACC and where Pitt stands in the conference after 4 games. Some of the teams in the league have played 4 games, some have played 3. And where does Pitt stand after 4 games? Where do the Panthers stack up in the ACC? And you can find different ACC rankings all over the place. You can find a lot of good ones. A lot of people who cover the conference really well. But I thought, you know what? Let's try our hand at ranking the teams in the ACC. In particular, let's, most importantly, figure out where Pitt stands in the context of the conference. 17 teams, 1 through 17. I think number 1 is pretty obvious. I don't know if 17 is obvious, but 16 and 17 are probably, I think everybody has the same 2 teams at the bottom of the league. I'm not sure if we all agree on which one's 16 and which one's 17, but I'm going to tell you that ranking as well. And more importantly, we're going to count down from 17 to 1. How do we rank the ACC? What stood out in the conference so far? And most importantly and most relevantly for our conversations here, where does Pitt stack up? Let's rank the conference through 4 weeks, 4 games of the 2024 season here on today's edition of the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That's one of those intros I probably could have just said, we're ranking the ACC. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't really need to talk for a minute there, or 90 seconds, or however long I talked about what we're going to do. But I mean, that's what we're doing today. We're ranking the ACC. I'm not going to do this every week, do ACC power rankings or things like that. But we will do it right now because you've got a decent sample size, 3 or 4 games for every team in the conference. Obviously, it's more interesting to do it right now when Pitt is 4-0. I think everyone would probably agree in the top 4 of the league, potentially top 3 or top 2. Certainly no lower than 4 or 5, depending on your personal biases. It's more fun to talk about when the team you cover is a team that's going to be at or near the top of those rankings. But I thought this would be a good time to do it. It's an off week. We got some different things we can talk about this week, and I got more stuff. Like yesterday we were doing the player rankings, although we did that last week as well. Tomorrow we're going to do some transfer talk and things like that. But I thought today, it's just sort of a nice sort of not middle spot, but like third of the way into the season for Pitt and most of the teams in the conference. Let's do a little rankings and let's look around the league. I mean, we're not just ranking. Also, we're kind of curious of what's going on around the conference, who's been standing out, who's playing well, who's not, who are the teams to really keep an eye on, who are the players to really keep an eye on. So let's dive through it here on the Wednesday edition of the Morning Pitt. I get my days all screwed up all the time. Here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, so you get all of our Pitt video content. We have these daily Morning Pitt videos, Monday through Friday, every day of the week. We have our weekly live stream that we do every Wednesday night. We'll have that tonight at 8:30 p.m. Me and Jim Hammett will get together and talk a little Pitt sports with you. And then we have our post-game shows. None of those this week, of course, because there's no game. But after the North Carolina game, which is a noon kickoff, we will be live for the Panther-Lair post-game show. I'm thinking we're not going to go immediately after the game ends. We'll go a little bit later on, maybe 7 or 8 o'clock, just because there's some... The weekends are very busy. Plus, I like kind of doing these things a little bit later since we do tend to have a few cold ones. We don't necessarily need to start drinking at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or at least I don't. You can. You are free to do so, and we'd love to see what condition you're in by the time the post-game show starts around 7 or 8. But make sure you tune in for that. If you want to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You can turn on notifications, and then you get an alert sent to your phone every time we go live. Of course, real quick, check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all the Pitt coverage you can possibly handle, football, basketball, and recruiting, and message boards where you can talk to other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Pitt fans are talking about Pitt sports. It's the best online community of Pitt fans that you're going to find, and we've got a special offer for you right now. Since Pitt is 4-0, use the promo code PITTPERFECT and get a free trial that will last you through the end of the regular season. It'll go all the way to November 30th. That's pretty good. That's more than 2 months of free Pitt coverage at Panther-Lair.com. Sign up now with the promo code PITTPERFECT, PITTPERFECT, Pitt Perfect. One word, no spaces, Panther-Lair.com, free trial through the end of the regular season. So when we rank the ACC, and it's interesting to look at 1 through 17, the teams that end up at the top, the teams that end up at the bottom, and it is interesting to keep in mind where these teams were projected to be preseason. We're not going to bring up every preseason ranking, but I think we know some of the teams that were expected to be good, and we know some of the teams that were not expected to be good. And we definitely know some of the teams who were supposed to be at the top and they're at the bottom, and some of the teams who were supposed to be at the bottom and they're at the top. There's one we've all followed very closely that was supposed to be at the bottom and currently finds itself near the top. There's a few others that were definitely supposed to be at the top, but they've been at or near the bottom. And in almost every case, like almost every situation where a team has either exceeded expectations, fallen short of expectations, or met expectations, it has happened almost 100%, almost 17 out of 17. It has happened because of the play at quarterback. The teams that were expected to have good quarterbacks and their quarterbacks have played well, like Miami, have done well. The teams that were expected to have good quarterbacks, but those quarterbacks have not played well, like NC State or SMU or Florida State, they've fallen short. And the teams that were not expected to be good, the teams that have major questions at quarterback, who have exceeded expectations, like Pitt, find themselves way up there. Like as one of the undefeated teams in the conference and one of the best, teams in the league through 4 games. And so it's interesting as we talk about team by team here, as we break down this ranking 17-1. We're going to be talking a lot of quarterbacks. We're going to come back to quarterbacks a lot. I made notes on like every team here, and most of them are quarterback related. And understandably so. It's the most important position on the team. It's the position that's going to, give you the most, it's going to most directly impact your success. We try to dance around that fact when when I do my player rankings and I don't make Eli Holstein number 1. But the reality is he has been, certainly Pitt's most important player. And he's not that far away from being the best player overall. I'm still edging toward Kyle Lewis, but Eli Holstein's closing that gap quickly. And like I said yesterday, if he goes down to North Carolina and wins and has a big game down there, he's going to be number 1, unless Kyle Lewis has like 2 pick sixes or something like that. There's just too much of an impact on the game. So let's start at the bottom of the ACC, rank them from 17 up to 1. Now, I think most ACC power rankings you find are probably going to have Wake Forest and Florida State at the bottom in some order. Maybe some people holding on to Florida State as a team they still believe in might have them 14 or 15 or something like that. But I think most respectable power rankings would have Florida State where they belong, which is 16 or 17. I'm putting them last. And I don't really feel bad about it. There's Wake Forest and Florida State, I think, have been the 2 worst teams in the conference thus far. They're the only 1-win teams in the league. Wake is 1-2. Florida State is 1-3. Head-to-head, Florida State would probably win, because Wake Forest, for as bad as Florida State's offense has been, for as bad as DJU has played for Florida State, Wake Forest's defense is the worst in the conference. They are getting shredded. And so if Florida State's offense could find success against anyone, it would probably be Wake Forest defense. But I say that, and knowing that Florida State has a pretty decent defense, Wake Forest quarterback, Bachmeier has been better than DJU. And so I kind of give Wake Forest the edge here. And look, the reality is Florida State's 1-3. They very, very well could be, and maybe even should be 0-4. They got more or less outplayed by Cal. Cal just blew up on itself a few times. And we'll mention this again when we get to Cal's ranking here. But Florida State probably could or should be 0-4. Wake Forest at least earned their win. Whoever they beat there, North Carolina A&T, whoever it was. Wake Forest earned their win. So I'm putting Florida State last. It's just they've been legitimately bad this year, legitimately bad, and I think they're the currently. And this is the worst team in the conference. And this is the other thing, too, is when we're doing a power ranking like this, when we're ranking them 1 through 17, are we ranking who we think are the best teams? Are we ranking the teams that have had the best seasons so far? Are we ranking who we think will do the best over the course of the season? Are we ranking 1 through 17 what we think the final 1 through 17 will be? And for me, the answer is a little bit of all of it. Florida State, I'm ranking last because I really don't think they're very good. I think their offense is bad enough to really ruin their season, and it already has to a large extent. But we're also ranking them last because they're 1-3 and could be and almost were 0-4. So it's a combination of those things. I don't think Florida State has the least amount of talent in the conference, but their season has been, I think they've been the worst team in the conference so far this season. So Florida State 17, Wake Forest number 16, and number 15, another preseason darling, team that was picked at or near the top of the conference, but again has been sunk by the quarterback play. NC State. NC State 2-2 this season. Grayson McCall, the transfer from Coastal Carolina, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Now he's hurt, so that all has not worked out for NC State. They've given up 50+ to any team with a pulse. They got crushed by Tennessee. They got crushed by Clemson. Their defense is very susceptible, obviously, when you give up 100 points to 2 teams like that. And their offense, they can't figure it out. So they might have a better option at quarterback backing up there. But it's CJ Bailey is a true freshman. He seems like he's the quarterback who's going to step in there. I lost my list. There it is. But with the state of things at NC State, with the way they've played thus far, how they've gotten blown out, and the quarterback issues that have crept up there, I made a joke the other day when they were getting blown out by Clemson that they're still gonna they'll rattle off some wins. They'll finish 8-4. They'll win a middling bowl game to be 9-4. And next year we'll all be talking about how NC State's one of the dark horse candidates to win the ACC. We do this every year. Dave Doran's able to find his way to 7, 8, 9 wins every year. He probably will do it again. But for right now, to me, they're the third worst team in this conference. And I rank them 15. Right ahead of them, another team counting on good quarterback play, a lot of preseason quarterback hype, and it's falling short. And that's Virginia Tech. Kyron Drones, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions in 4 games. They lost to Vanderbilt. They lost to Rutgers. The only 2 power conference teams they played, and arguably 2 of the worst power conference teams in the country. Now, I know Rutgers is 4-0, so I don't want to say that Rutgers right now is the worst power conference team in the country or whatever, but it's Rutgers, right? So, and I think that game was in Blacksburg. You lose that game, you lose the Vanderbilt. Virginia Tech just not looking very impressive right now. There's a lot of time for them to get better. I think, Bashal Tutin is a good running back. He's one of the top backs in the conference. I think Kyron Jones is better than he has played, but so far he's played the way he's played. And I can't really give them a whole lot. I think Virginia Tech's quarterback play has been disappointing, and that's why Virginia Tech has been disappointing. That's why I have them at number 14. Number 13, and this is largely impacted by recency bias, but I'm sorry, when you give up 70 to James Madison, I almost feel like I have you ranked too high when I put you at number 13. That's North Carolina. Again, quarterback issues. Their quarterback gets hurt. They go to a different quarterback, Jacoby Briswell, and maybe that'll work out for Carolina. Maybe it'll get better. They get a chance against Duke this weekend, and then they get Pitt the weekend after that. So a couple of teams that they've historically had success against, they'll have an opportunity to bounce back against. But right now, North Carolina giving up 70 to James Madison. I'm sorry, I know they scored 50, but and they should have the offensive firepower to hang in most games. But with that defense, I know I said earlier Wake Forest has the worst defense in the ACC. North Carolina is battling them for that, and so I can't really, North Carolina is 13 on this list, and if I was really giving it a recency bias, they'd be even worse. Number 12, I have SMU. Here again, a situation where a quarterback was expected to be really good, Preston Stone. He hasn't. He got benched, sitting down for, I think Kevin Jennings is his name. But SMU, sitting at 3-1, just, again, the quarterback play being a disappointment, supposed to be one of the strengths. I mean, one of those like dark horse guys to be, dark horse candidate to be among the best quarterbacks in the conference, and he's fallen short. He hasn't lived up to it, Preston Stone, and that's why they are where they are. Number 11, I have Virginia. Virginia's 3-1, so solid start. I think their quarterback play has been okay. Anthony Calandria, he's been okay. I don't know how good Virginia really is. Coming up, they got Boston College, Louisville, and at Clemson. So 3-1 could turn to 3-4 real quick, and I kind of think it will. And whatever hype we have for Virginia, or sort of cautious optimism we have about Virginia, I think that'll be it'll be tested, and in a month we'll know who Virginia is. I think we'll have a very clear picture, and I mean that's the case with a lot of these teams. But I mean, Virginia getting off to a 3-1 start, but then facing three of the better teams, probably three of the top 5 teams in the conference in Boston College, Louisville, and Clemson. We'll find out what you're made of. Number 10, I have Syracuse. I think Syracuse is really promising. I really do. The win over Georgia Tech was a big win, but losing to Stanford was a big loss and a disappointing loss. Kyle McCord has been, quite frankly, better than I expected him to be. I wasn't sold on Kyle McCord from his time at Ohio State. I didn't know if it would necessarily translate with the players that he'd be around at Syracuse, but he's been really good. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the conference, and here's a situation where I don't know if everybody was buying into Kyle McCord before the season started. I was on the fence about him. And so I was on the fence about Syracuse, but because his play has exceeded my expectations, they have exceeded my expectations. Now, they get Holy Cross this weekend, and then they go to UNLV. After that, at NC State and at Pitt. So, chance there, if they're as good as I think they might be, they should beat Holy Cross, they should win at UNLV, and they should probably win at NC State and be sitting at 5-1 when they come to Pitt for that Thursday night game. So, huge stretch coming up here for Syracuse, not necessarily a stretch for them to, an opportunity for them to present themselves as one of the best teams in the conference, but definitely winnable games. That if you are a good team, you should win these games. Holy Cross, UNLV, NC State, even with those last two being on the road. So I have Syracuse at number 10, definitely on the watch list there. Stanford, who just beat Syracuse, I have it number 9. The potential's there. I just don't know how good Stanford really is. They got that win at Syracuse. That's good, but I don't know. I kind of have a feeling Stanford, like Virginia. I have Stanford at number 9. I have Virginia at number 11. I think they'll both be in the bottom 5 by the end of this season, if not lower. Number 8, maybe the surprise team of the conference. I mean, Pitt is probably the biggest surprise of the league this year so far through 4 games. But I would put this team not far behind. It's Cal. Cal is 3-1. They got off to that 3-0 start. Looked really good doing it. They won at Auburn. And I know Auburn's not all that good this year, but you still went on the road to an SEC school and won. And so I'm going to give you a lot of credit for that. They should have beaten Florida State, but they couldn't get out of their own way. My concern with Cal is their offense. I just don't know if they're scoring enough. They're two sort of gimme games, UC Davis and San Diego State. They only scored 31 in each of those games. I mean, you've got to put up more points than that in those games if you're going to have an offense that can compete in the ACC. And I don't know if Cal's defense is good enough to keep them into a bunch of low-scoring games. I think there are a couple teams that are good enough, that have good enough defenses to keep them in low-scoring games. I'm not sure if Cal is one. So I have them at number 8 right now. Definitely on the watch list, though. We'll keep an eye on them. Number 7, Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech is just going to be the agent of chaos here. They're 3-2 right now. 2 games that they lost were on the road at Syracuse and at Louisville. That probably, I mean, when you start off, 1-2 in conference play, because they do have that win over that Irish win over Florida State. You start off 1-2 in conference play. You probably, you're on the outside looking in when it comes to the end of the season. It's going to be tough to make up that ground. You have to be pretty much perfect the rest of the way to get to the ACC title game. So, Georgia Tech is probably not going to make it, but I definitely think Georgia Tech is going to have a lot to say about who does make it. Okay, I think they're going to be the agent of chaos that's going to give problems to a lot of teams. They're off this week, and then they have Duke at North Carolina. They get Notre Dame, and then they finish with at Virginia Tech, Miami, and NC State, and then at Georgia. So, the Miami game in particular, I'm watching that one. All right, that's at Georgia Tech. Duke is an undefeated team right now. We'll see where they are in 2 weeks. So a couple of bigger games there for Georgia Tech and opportunities to, I think, have an impact on the ACC title race. I think they're going to be a problem in the conference. They're not going to be easy outs because I think Haynes King is really good, and I think they have got some other talented players there. Again, quarterback situation kind of carrying it. Number 6, I have Duke. Duke is 4-0, and yeah, I have 2 one-loss teams ranked above Duke. I apologize, Duke, but that's just kind of where I'm at. Duke goes through the non-conference schedule undefeated. They had a win at Northwestern, so that's a good win. Duke is a team we'll find out about real fast, okay? Because they have North Carolina at home this week. And again, I know what I said about North Carolina, but that's a rivalry game. We'll see what happens. They go to Georgia Tech. Then they have Florida State and SMU at home. There's a real opportunity there. If Duke is for real, if Malik Murphy can carry his level of play, so that he's shown so far, the transfer from Texas, again, quarterback play being one of the big factors here. If Malik Murphy can keep playing like he has been, there's a chance for Duke with this schedule coming up. Carolina, at Georgia Tech, Florida State, SMU. There's a chance to be 6-2 or even 7-1. I guess 8-0 is not completely off the table, but Duke could legitimately go through 2/3 of the season and come out of it after 8 games 7-1 or 6-2. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. It just comes down to the question of whether or not Duke is for real, and we'll find out in these 4 games. We'll find out if Duke is for real. So I have them at number 6 right now, and maybe that's a little low for a 4-0 team. I just don't know if they've proven themselves yet. Number 5. This might be the most dangerous team in the conference. Honestly, this might be the team that, I would say any of these top 5 teams are legitimate contenders for the ACC championship game. All right. And this team right here, 3-1, might be the most dangerous out of all of them. It's Boston College. Thomas Castellanos is really good. I loved him as a player last year. He's been excellent this year. Bill O'Brien, I think, has just helped Castellanos get even better. They've got a defense that was largely, it was built by Jeff Hafley, recruited there, a lot of those guys, and they're playing really stingy defense. They have one of the best defenses in the conference, plus a dynamic quarterback. They're 3-1, like I said, but that one loss was on the road at Missouri, and it wasn't like they got blown out in that game. They took Missouri, a top 10 team, down to the wire on the road. Up next, they have Western Kentucky. They're at Virginia and at Virginia Tech. Probably should be 6-1 going into Louisville and Syracuse at home, which will be 2 games that will really tell us, if Boston College is going to be, a contender for that ACC championship game. But I think Boston College has a chance to be really good this year. Again, any of these top 5 teams, I think, are ACC title contenders right now for a variety of reasons, partially their record and partially what they've shown us. Boston College is right there in that mix. All right, top 4 is where I get a little bit dicey, okay? As a matter of fact, I'll just list them, okay? Because there's no point in counting down anymore. I have Miami number 1, obviously. I think everybody would agree about that. They've been the best team in the conference. It's just a question of whether or not this is their year. I have Clemson number 2, Pitt number 3, and Louisville number 4. So I really went back and forth about 2, 3, and 4. Clemson, Pitt, and Louisville. What order to put those 3? I was pretty sure those 3 teams are the ones that I would put 2 through 4. But I went back and forth about how to rank them. Okay, because I can make a really good case for Pitt as the number 2 team here. I can. Largely on the strength of 2 wins over non-conference, power conference opponents, and then doing it once on the road, both with the comebacks. I think they've got a top 5 quarterback. They've got a top 2 offense. Just in terms of the stats so far through 4 games. Pitt through 4 games looks like a team that can compete for the top of the ACC. All right. And it was only kind of like trying to avoid homer bias or something that I didn't put them at number 2. But then at the same time, even putting Pitt over Louisville, the only real separating factor is that Pitt played 2 power conference, non-conference opponents, whereas Louisville is, 3-0 right now, and their one power conference win was against Georgia Tech. They played Austin Peay and Jacksonville State. Now Louisville is going to Notre Dame this weekend, so we'll find out a little bit more about them. But then they get SMU and at Virginia. Louisville's got a tough schedule after that. Miami, at Boston College, at Clemson, at Stanford, Pitt. We'll see what happens at Notre Dame. Louisville should get the SMU and Virginia wins, start off the ACC schedule 3-0, and then they can prove it. Miami, at BC, at Clemson, at Stanford, and then Pitt in the home finale for the Cardinals. Jeff Brom, I think, is just really good. Tyler Shugg, quarterback, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions through 3 games. He's really good. I think that duo has been everything I expected it to be. It's a question of whether Shugg can stay healthy, but if he does, I think Brom is going to work wonders with him, and they'll I think they'll keep rolling. You can make a case for them over Pitt. And I think a lot of people probably would have them over Pitt in the power rankings, but I just look at it like, well, Eli Holstein's thrown 12 touchdown passes, and Pitt has beaten 2 Big 12 teams. And they've done it in pretty impressive fashion with the comebacks. And so I give Pitt the edge there. Clemson, I think I ended up with them as number 2, partially to avoid a homer bias, but also partially because there's still a Clemson bias at play. It's still Clemson. They've still got the Clemson talent. Their defense is still... their defense. And the biggest question mark with Clemson coming into this year is, and has been, offense. Like, would their offense be up to the task? Well, they just scored 59 on NC State. That doesn't mean you're going to score 59 every week, but that helps answer it a little bit. It seems like their offense might be a little bit better. And if it is, then Clemson's one of the best teams in the ACC. So I give a slight edge to Clemson, just out of the Clemson bias, and because I don't want to be biased of putting Pitt at number 2. But when you go 4-0 and you beat 2 Big 12 teams and you've got a top 5 quarterback and a top 2 offense, you are one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the conference so far. We'll see where they end up, 4 games from now. And Pitt's going to have an important stretch coming up here where they're going to be able to prove some things with Carolina, Cal, and Syracuse in the month of October before that real gauntlet in November when they play 5 games. But for now, through 4. Pitt's one of the best teams in the conference. I put him at number 3. Wouldn't complain if you put him at number 2. Wouldn't complain if you put him at number 4. I don't know if I would necessarily put him below Boston College or Duke right now. I feel pretty confident about Boston College at number 5, Duke at number 6. But I think, Pitt, no worse than 4. Is what I would say. No worse than 4. What's your ranking? And maybe if you don't want to list all 17 teams, where would you put Pitt in your ACC poll right now? How would you rank the teams? You agree with Miami at number 1. You agree with Florida State at number 17. And do you agree with Pitt at 3? Or would you put them 2 or 4 or 7? Or where would you put them? No, I doubt that you would put them 7. Nobody's putting Pitt number 7. All right, let me hear it. What do you think? What's your rankings? Put them in the comments here on YouTube. Put them on Twitter and reply to this tweet. Or most, where you're going to get the best conversation is go to the message boards at Panther-Lair.com and have the conversation there. Talk about where Pitt should be ranked, where they are ranked, and what you think makes sense for Pitt's spot in the ACC right now, after 4 games. Go to Panther-Lair.com. Remember, if you're not a member, you want to try it out for free through the end of the regular season, sign up with promo code PITPERFECT. PITTPERFECT, PITPERFECT, to get a free trial through the end of the season. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Make sure you like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. And, appreciate you tuning in. Hope you've had a great week so far. Don't forget the live show tonight at 8:30 p.m. We will catch up with you then to talk Pitt sports live for an hour tonight at 8:30, and we'll be back again tomorrow for the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.